Good morning, everyone. Today I want to do something a little bit different. I want to do a retrospective on one of the fights that made a massive impact on me and became sort of indelled on my psyche from then all the way through. And one of the fights that lives with me in the memory. I'm sure we all have fights like this. All of us as boxing fans who love the sport will have had fights that just not necessarily were the best fights you've ever seen, but just made an impact on us and just cemented our love for the sport. And one of the ones for me was, I'm going to take us back to 1996 and Evander Holyfield versus Mike Tyson, the first fight. If we go back, Evander Holyfield was coming in on the back of a fight against Bobby Ches, and then previous to that, he was coming off a TKO loss to Riddick Bowe. The Evander Holyfield-Riddick Bowe fights being some of the best heavyweight fights you will ever see, ever, bar none. And then he went in and he fought Bobby Ches at Madison Square Garden, I believe, on a kind of a double-header in which Lennox Lewis fought Ray Mercer, in which was another absolutely fantastic fight, one that if you haven't seen, I strongly advise you to go and watch, because absolutely fantastic brawl with the absolutely rock-hard Ray Mercer. So coming into this, there are a lot of people calling for this fight, saying it shouldn't even go ahead. There were concerns over Holyfield's heart, and people were genuinely fearing for his life, and believing this shouldn't go ahead. This wasn't fair. Holyfield was in real mortal danger at the hands of Mike Tyson. Mike Tyson was this is the second coming of Mike Tyson, the Tyson that was coming out of prison. There's a misconception that in Mike Tyson's career, after the death of Customato, that Don King came in and stole Mike Tyson away, if you like. And that was certainly probably, Don King's intent from very early on when Mike Tyson came about. But after the death of Customato, now Customato brought in Jim Jacobs and Bill Caton to look after the financial and legal side and managing side of Mike Tyson's career. After the death of Customato, it was actually Bill Caton and Jim Jacobs that contacted Don King and brought Don King in, thinking Don King would be a good figure, to take control of Tyson's career, whilst Jim Jacobs and Bill Caton still having some degree of input into sort of the managerial side. But a lot of people think Don King sort of stole him away, but that isn't the case. Like I said, Jim Jacobs and Bill Caton actually brought him in. But Tyson's been released from prison. He had knocked over the likes of Peter McNeely, Bruce Seldon, our own Frank Bruno, and Buster Mathis, all of whom had basically fell over and laid down at the hands of Mike Tyson. And the seemingly indestructible Mike Tyson, other than the fact that he had lost to Buster Douglas prior to this, his reputation was even more enhanced by the fact that these guys had fell over in front of him. So coming into the Evander Holyfield fight, he was an absolutely overwhelming favourite. In terms of spectacle, this is why this fight lives with me so strongly and sort of burned itself into my soul, if you like, because this was, in terms of spectacle, this was just something you kind of, and I'll post the fight in my community feed after this, so you can all watch it. Unfortunately, it's a Showtime official release, so it's the best visual quality you can get, but unfortunately, it isn't the commentary of Reg Guttridge and Jim Watt, which, as we've said before many times, they are a dream pairing, and there were so many memorable moments in the commentary from Reg and Jim throughout this. So unfortunately, this isn't the copy. I'm sure that copy's out there if you find it, but all the ones I've been able to find have been really, really grainy, almost VCR sort of quality transfers of it. As two guys into the ring, Holyfield comes in, he's bouncing around now. Holyfield, in the build-up to this fight, in many bits of the press in the build-up to this fight, Holyfield said many times, Holyfield had this serene confidence, this unbroken confidence going into this. And he said before this many times that the only reason that he hadn't won this fight yet was that November the 9th hadn't come. The only reason he wasn't champion, he hadn't beat Mike Tyson, because November the 9th hadn't come. This was so much of a certainty in Holyfield's mind. And it came from the Olympic trials where they had sparred together. And very early on in those sparring sessions, it was clear that Holyfield had got the upper hand, if the stories were to be to believe. So Holyfield was it was never in doubt for Holyfield. So as the first round opens, Mike Tyson comes out. And again, a victim of the fact that the four previous guys had fell over. He came out firing streets, lead right hands, straight right hands, Hitting the target a lot of times, but missing a lot of the times. Holyfield would beat Tyson to the punch on the outside, and when it got up close, Holyfield would smother and hold. Superb tactics from Holyfield. Towards the end of round one, there's an exchange where Tyson throws one shot that kind of lands on the bell and follows up with another shot after the bell. And then Holyfield gives Tyson one back late after the bell, which clearly hits Tyson. And Tyson has this grin on his face like, yeah, this is game on. This is game on. And there's a great bit in the Reg Guttridge commentary where Holyfield lands that shot, the very later one after the bell, and Reg Guttridge says, and Holyfield there, says you can have that one back, Tyson. I can't do justice to that as Reg did, but it's a joy. Then we get on to round two. And in round two, Holyfield actually starts to land clean, and he has Tyson on the ropes at some occasion, and his hooks and his straight hands and his hooks land home, and you can visibly see Tyson's head being rocked by these shots. And this is kind of like, this is where the start of the awe and disbelief starts to set in, because everyone at that point believed Tyson was this immovable object, even though he'd suffered a loss previously. But this post-prison version, looked awesome. It just breezed through everyone else. The fight kind of continues to this. Holyfield's still employing those tactics. He does use his head a lot of the time, but Mike comes in with his head as well. We get to round 5, I believe it is. And up until this point, Tyson really hasn't made a dent in Holyfield. And sort of midway through round 5, Tyson lands, I believe it's a right hook to the body and then a left hook to the chin. A really, really sweet, superb combination. These are the first punches that really have any sort of visual effect on Holyfield. And Holyfield's kind of stunned. He comes up out of stance and steps back and like, yeah, that affected him. You can see that affected him. And then shortly after that, Mike Tyson throws for me. Now, if I had to sum up 5 seconds of boxing and give it to anyone and show them why I love this sport, Mike Tyson throws his signature, and he'd done it better than anyone else in history for me. It's the right hook to the body, and then he brings it up through the middle as an uppercut. And he throws it midway through round 5. And it's an absolutely sublime, artistic, beautiful, if you could get a painting of that, or just that sort of 4-second clip of video, it's just a gorgeous moment and a true display of the artistry you can apply to boxing in that sense. Just as a two-punch combination, just the most perfect example you will ever see. It's an absolute thing of beauty. Although this has no actual effect on Holyfield, he just looks up and carries on. But yeah, midway through round 5 is an absolutely just wow. And watching it, you watch it back and it makes the hair stand up, on the back of your neck. It's absolutely just a gorgeous thing. We move into round 6, and I think it's early or midway through round 6. Tyson suffers a cut to the eye. It's a headbutt. So they take Tyson over to the corner for the doctors to have a look at the cut. So this indicates to the crowd that Tyson is cut. And with that, this sort of visually affects Tyson, and Holyfield starts to land even more cleanly and more often. And the crowd then, the chants of Holyfield, and this is at the MGM Grand, Tyson was resident at the MGM Grand. And this is where the crowd cheer for Holyfield absolutely start to erupt. The atmosphere at this fight, the crowd atmosphere, is something to behold. It's something is very rarely replicated. But when these chants of Holyfield go up, they're absolutely deafening, and this spurs Holyfield on. And this is really where we start to see the swing come in, and this is really where Holyfield starts to take over visually. Tyson is shipping a lot of punishment. He clearly looks, shaken and not comfortable. And then sort of late towards the end of round 6, Holyfield times Tyson absolutely beautifully. And he throws a kind of, it's almost a hook come uppercut type shot that lands around the upper chest, sort of chin. Tyson's tucked and it lands around this area. But it sends Tyson onto his back, and Tyson skids across the ropes on his ass. And, again, this is just a moment of wow. And there's a very famous shot where Tyson is sort of on his hands and knees, and Jack Nicholson is in the background with a blue dinner jacket and his Ray-Ban Wayfarers on, screaming at Tyson to get up. Again, in terms of if you could have a painting of that, or that just clip stilled, the sight of Jack Nicholson screaming with Mike Tyson to get off the floor is, again, one of the things that make this fight just the stuff of legend and just one of those moments. The fight continues to kind of shift in Holyfield's favour. And we get to sort of the end of round 10, and Holyfield lands a shot. Holyfield actually lands 3 consecutive hooks to Tyson's head, which this is the start of the end. And then after that, Tyson tees up a right hand. And as he's teeing up the right hand, Holyfield beats him to the punch and lands right on Tyson's jaw, which almost sends one leg underneath Tyson, and he stumbles towards the ropes, in which Holyfield lands an absolutely devastating barrage of punches. And as the bell rings, Mitch Halpin jumps in to wave the end of the round. Tyson sort of comes off the ropes, walks back to his corner. He's absolutely no idea kind of where he is. I'm surprised he goes back to his own corner, because he's totally gone at this point. And he sits down on the stool in the corner. And Jay Bright, and I forget who else was in his corner at this time, are trying to remember. But the look on Tyson's face, he's totally gone at this point. So the bell goes for round 11. Tyson gets up, and you can see again on his face, Tyson has really, he's really, really hurt. Kind of only half knows where he is or what's going on. And as soon as Mitch Halpin, says box, Holyfield just continues the barrage, lands 3 or 4 or 5 absolutely just full-blooded, clean punches on Tyson. And Mitch Halpin's seen enough. He steps in, dives in actually on the rope, saves Tyson, and the fight is over. And as the barrage at the end of the 10th and beginning of the 11th, the crowd is absolutely going through the roof. The roof has lifted off to the MGM Grand at this point. In terms of atmosphere, this is just an absolute, just a gem to behold. And as the fight gets waved off again, the crowd go absolutely wild. Holyfield gets lifted aloft. And it's just one of the most amazing things I've ever seen, one of the most amazing sporting spectacles I've ever seen. As you probably know, Mitch Halpin, not long after that, commits suicide. I think I forget the fight, but he was involved in a fight where a guy died. I think it was earlier in that year, I believe. I'm sure Joe Stunner can tell you the names and the dates. He's far better at that recall than what I am. But yeah, well, it's a shame, because Mitch Halpin, I thought, done a fantastic job of refereeing that fight. I think Mitch Halpin could have gone on to be one of the great referees. I thought for his age, I think he was early 30s, but I thought he was a superb referee, and I thought he refereed that wonderfully. So that was very, very tragic. But yeah, like I said, I'll post a fight in my feed. But in terms of me personally, there are many, many fights, and this is just one of them. I'll probably do a few more of these retrospects, because I love going over them myself. But just, sometimes you see something, especially in your younger years, you see a fight, and we're all boxing fans. We all follow this sport, and I do this channel, and you guys watch, and all the other guys that produce content. We do these things out of the love of the sport, and there's a lot of sort of poisonous stuff in the comments surrounding boxing, and a lot of sort of discussion. It's a bit of a nasty environment at times, but essentially we all just love this game. We all have a passion for this sport. And it's moments like that kind of live with you. I'm sure you're all the same. I'm sure you have fights that you've watched that have a special place in your heart that you'll take to the grave. They live with you for your entire life. And that was one for me. Just a truly, truly, truly awesome spectacle, an amazing night, an amazing just performance. And Tyson, I think, certainly towards the end of his career, it was very true. Tyson did, if he didn't intimidate the guy and get the guy out of there, he earned a reputation of a bully almost. But I don't think that stands. And I think this fight, this is actually, in a kind of a backhanded way, this is one of my favourite Mike Tyson performances. And I was a Holyfield fan, but I was even a bigger Mike Tyson fan. But because the argument is levelled at Mike Tyson that he was a bully, and if he didn't get you out of there and he couldn't intimidate you before he got in the ring, he would basically fold, essentially. Well, this showed that, for me, that weren't the case, because Tyson could have sat down very early on. He could have committed a foul to try and get himself disqualified. You know, that was levelled at him in the Mike Tyson Holyfield 2 fight, which I don't agree with. I'll give you my own version of that and my own version of Mike Tyson's psyche and as to what happened in that fight. But he could have got out of this had he wanted to, if that was the case. But he took his lumps, and the bravery he showed through the second half of this fight, especially in 10 and 11, was truly heroic, in my opinion. So I think this was, even though Tyson lost, I thought this was, for me, one of his memorable performances for a strange reason, I suppose. It appears strange to everyone else, but I thought it was heroic by Tyson. I thought it was a great display, even though he lost in just the balls that he showed toward the end. But yeah, something that's lived with me for many, many years and will live with me for many, many years, until I shuffle off this mortal coil. But I want to do a few more of these retrospectives because we've all followed this sport for our lifetimes, haven't we? We love it and we cherish it and hold this sport with a special sort of place and a love. But yeah, I'll share the fight in my feed, and if you haven't seen it for a while, I'm sure all you guys have seen it. All your knowledge runs pretty deep. If you haven't, treat yourself, set yourself an hour or whatever, 30 odd minutes. And treat yourself to this because this is a real gem. Yeah, so that's it. A little bit different. I'll see you all soon. I'm out.